the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And yeah, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I debated whether or not I should record a podcast for this past weekend's game between the Philadelphia Union and Nashville SC, because there's not much to talk about in a 0-0 game. There wasn't much to talk about at Jim Curtin's press conference. Wasn't much to talk about in the Union locker room. It was just vibes of, nobody really wants to be here. I kind of felt like the fans didn't really care for the game against Nashville, especially when the game kicked off. It was more full than I thought it was going to be. So, it's a credit to Union fans for showing out. But I didn't get the vibes from that game that was the last game of the regular season. Home game, I should say. Because last year's last regular season home game against Toronto, it was a totally different atmosphere. Now, maybe part of that's because the game was played midday. The Union, if I'm not mistaken, won that game 4-0, 4-1, something like that. Daniel Gazdag scored a hat trick. Somebody scored a hat trick that game. Man, I can't remember. It's been a year ago. And I can't remember what happened in that game, so I'll look it up here in a second. But I don't think that people were just really into that game. Yeah, Daniel Gazdag hat trick. Of course, he scored a penalty in that game. But I don't know. The energy in the stadium, I don't think would have let you know if this was your first game that, this is the last regular season home game. I don't think first-time attenders would have got that from the crowd excitement. Really, the only time that the crowd got excited was when Kevin Casey was reading out the lineups and he announced Kai Wagner's name, and that place erupted. You heard multiple "Pay Kai Wagner" chants. Apparently, before the start of the game, Ernst Tanner got into it with some Union fans in the river end. Once they showed their "Pay Kai Wagner" signs and doing the chant "Pay Kai Wagner," apparently Ernst turned to the fans and said, "You guys have no idea what he's asking for." The fans and him exchanged words, and then Ernst just walked away. That's a story I heard. And I'm not going to talk about the Kai Wagner situation till he's officially gone. I know he had that Instagram post leading up to this game saying, last home game with the Philadelphia Union, last regular season home game at Subaru Park. Now, I'll believe Kai Wagner's gone when he's officially on another team. But here we are, talking about the Nashville and Philadelphia Union game. But before we do that, we do have some news. So thank goodness for that, because, man, this would be a really short episode. We're probably talking like a 15, 20-minute episode if we didn't have news. So without further ado, let's get straight into the news. All right, and what news points am I talking about? It's a big news that Adrien Heath has been fired by Minnesota United. Who saw that one coming? Has been with the Loons since their inaugural MLS season in 2017. Almost 7 years in Minnesota. They also fired Mark Watson, the technical director there in Minnesota, who used to be on Adrien Heath's staff, and then he got promoted to technical director in 2019, I want to say. But Adrien Heath finishes his time in Minnesota with 81 wins, 91 losses, and 57 draws. Was the fourth longest tenured coach in MLS, and he got let go. He led Minnesota United to the playoffs in the last 4 seasons. Minnesota currently in a playoff spot right now, and now he's out. And listening to the owners of Minnesota, they basically said that, they appreciate what Adrien did for the club. Making the playoffs is good and everything, but they've got to do more than just making the playoffs. They got to win playoff games. They got to reach MLS Cup. And of course, that's why you play the game, to win championships. And if they believe Adrien Heath wasn't going to be that guy to get them playoff wins, get them to an MLS Cup, then I understand why they fired him. It's kind of like Arsene Wenger in a sense, right? Where he was pretty stable in getting Arsenal in the top 4 every season, and they eventually let him go. And then you see what Arsenal looked like with Unai Emery. Top 4 was a lot harder to get than it was under Arsene. Then they go to Mikel Arteta and look like they're going to challenge for the title last season. And then they have that huge choke job towards the end, and Manchester City winds up winning the Premier League yet again. Arsenal this weekend beat Man City by a score of 1-0. Makes things a little bit interesting in the Premier League if you pay attention to that league at all. Who would have thought that Tottenham Hotspur would be in first place, no losses, 20 points. Right behind them is Arsenal, also on 20 points. But Tottenham have that better goal differential, 18 to Arsenal 16. 2 London clubs back at the top of the Premier League, followed by 2 northern clubs in Man City and Liverpool. We don't have to talk about Manchester United sitting in 10th place. Late heroics from Scott McTominay. I think I read a stat that was the latest come-from-behind victory Manchester United have ever had in the top flight. 2 goals coming in the 90th plus minute. So, yeah, this is a little bit of a Arsene situation where the Kroenkes got annoyed finishing top 4. They thought, okay, well, Arsene can't get us any higher. And that's what it reminds me of Adrien Heath and Minnesota United. So we'll see the direction that Minnesota goes in the offseason. And then Wayne Rooney in DC United announced after DC United's last game this past weekend that Wayne Rooney would be leaving the club, that both he and DC United decided it's best that they part ways. And Wayne Rooney says after his press conference that, I don't have anything lined up. And then the rumors come out this afternoon, that Birmingham City over in the championship in England sacked the manager, and they're set to appoint Wayne Rooney as the next manager. So much for not having anything lined up. Wayne? Wasn't the greatest tenure in MLS with DC United. Wayne Rooney, that is. But yeah, that joke of a franchise down in DC, it's a lot more than just changing the manager, than bringing in players. The ticket increases have pissed off a lot of DC United supporters. Wayne Rooney in 53 matches with DC, 14 wins, 13 draws, 26 losses. Not great. And part of it, I don't think is his fault because he inherited a really, really, really bad squad. Had to switch to a back five a lot of times. Normally played with a four-back system in Derby. Wanted to do that here in DC, but couldn't because of personnel, injuries, and whatnot. And he tried to make the best of his situation, and it wasn't good enough. DC United missing out for the playoffs yet again. You guys feel bad for a historic franchise like DC United? Probably not. But it's crazy when you look at how much money that DC United spend and they fire Ben Olsen. Look what Ben Olsen did with Houston. Wins the US Open Cup. Look what Houston are doing right now in the Russian Conference. Sitting in fourth place with 48 points. Plus 11 goal differential. 48 goals scored, 37 goals against. Benny Ball is alive and well there out in Houston. And so I'm just shocked with all the changes we've seen this season in MLS with all the different managers. MLS has set a new record with a total of 8 managers being fired, 9 if you want to count Wayne Rooney, even though that was DC United's last game. So does that really count? But it's been insane just seeing the amount of managers get sacked here in MLS this season. A lot of openings. Colorado, Portland, New York Red Bulls, Minnesota, DC United. Toronto, we saw them sign John Herdman towards the end of the season. Canada's national team manager. Chicago's another one. And remember all the rumors, Jim Curtin hasn't signed a contract extension. And remember that clip I played you guys a few months ago where I have no clue who that person was that asked Jim Curtin, can you come and save our club here in Chicago? And Jim Curtin asked the fan or whoever that guy was, do you want to be my agent? A great response from Jim Curtin. A great response. But moving on to some Union news for you guys. The Union have announced, and I'm sure all of you guys have seen this by now, their end of the season MLS awards that they submitted to MLS. And I saw a lot of fans upset about the players on the Union's list. Like, how do you leave Kai Wagner out? How is an ex-player in this list? There should be more Union players. And I don't think people really know how the MLS season award voting works. So each team has to nominate players. And so it wasn't anything that fans voted for, wasn't anything that the league voted for. It's each team submitted the list of players that they want listed for these awards. The Union players and staff voted for a team MVP to be between Julian Kranza and Andre Blake. Goalkeeper, obvious Andre Blake. Defenders, Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes. Young Player of the Year, Nate Harriel and Jack McGlynn. The only one I have an issue for, I think, is Kai Wagner should probably be in there for either one of those guys, Jack Elliott or Jacob Glesnes. Neither one of the center backs have had a great season for the Union. I've said it multiple times on the podcast this year that this is the best offensively we've seen Kai Wagner with the Union. And the players on the team decided not to nominate him for Defender of the Year. Think that pisses Kai off any? Potentially. Julian Kranza for MVP. He's cooled down here lately. Maybe a little bit of a head scratcher. I mean, if he was scoring consistently, then I definitely see the argument for Julian being an MVP. In second place with 13 goals on the Union, Daniel Gazai with 14. We all know 11 of those have come from the penalty spot. Obviously, the Union players didn't account for Daniel Goslick's penalties. That's why he's not nominated as a team MVP. But those are your Union awards. And if I'm honest with you guys, and I think you guys can be honest with yourself, no Union players winning an award this season in MLS. It is what it is. The Union have been average, I would say, this season. Or maybe this is what they were always supposed to be, right? They've come back down to reality from last season. So don't expect any Union players to win a end of the season award. And then finally, speaking of Union players, Nate Harriel gets his first call up to the U.S. Youth National Team under 23s. Jack McGlynn and Brandan Craig also get called up, along with former Philadelphia Union player Paxton Aronson. They'll be a part of the group that takes on Mexico on Wednesday, October 11th, and Japan on Tuesday, October 17th. This is in preparation for the U.S.'s first appearance in the Olympics since 2008. It's been a hot minute since the U.S. has been in the Olympics for soccer, men's soccer specifically. So we'll see. We'll see Nate Harriel with the national team, well, the youth national team. Will he start getting looks for the full national team? Potentially. Think that right back spot's probably wide open. So Genio Dest isn't setting the world on fire at PSV in the Netherlands. So maybe Nate does have a legitimate shot with a national team. You never know. But great to see Nate finally get caught up with the youth teams, and looking forward to those two games against Mexico and Japan. All right, so let's move on to Philadelphia Union versus Nashville. A game we all know, we all sat through that, ended 0-0. And I'm looking at my halftime notes that I wrote during the game, and I said, the first half was a snooze fest. Nashville looked to find Hani Mukhtar often when they went on the attack, which the Union dealt with well. Union really struggled to break down Nashville's low block, shooting the ball 8 times, 6 of those outside of the 18-yard box. That's all I can come up with at half. And if you thought the first half was bad, the second half was even worse. And to their credit, Nashville, that is, I think they played this game fantastically. I was talking to Kyle Almany during the week, and we were saying, if you want to beat the Union, look at Columbus, look at Atlanta. They should have forced the Union to have more of the ball. Forced the Union to break you down. Because that's exactly what Nashville did in this game. 53% possession to the Union, 47% to Nashville. 54-46 in the first half, 50-50 in the second. So Nashville started to see a little bit more of the ball. But that's what you got to do to beat the Union. Force them to break you down. Union had 14 total shots this game, with only 3 of them coming inside the 18-yard box. Everything else was outside the 18. And this is what Nashville always does. They set up in a low block, 2 blocks of 4. I know a lot of people hate this style of play. And I do too. But there's a reason why Nashville has conceded the least amount of goals in the league. And it's because of what we saw Saturday night. They're so well disciplined. And that's why I was a little bit shocked when the Union went down to Nashville back in the summertime and won that game 2-0. Penalty kicks from Daniel Gazdag. Because Nashville just doesn't concede. And they forced the Union to take shots outside the box, which the Union don't want to be taking shots from there. Jim Curtin says that all the time. And I thought it was interesting watching how Nashville approached this game. When they went on the attack, they're only sending 3 players forward, and Mukhtar, Bunbury, and Leal, having Dax McCarty hit those long balls up top to Hani Mukhtar and trying to get Hani in 1v1 situations. The center backs are going to hit some long balls against you as well. But really, I mean, the game plan for Nashville coming into this game was get Dax McCarty on the ball, let Dax look for Hani Mukhtar, and see if Hani can beat players 1v1. Damion Lowe played fantastic in this game, and we'll get to Damion here in a second. But a really basic game plan from Nashville, which everybody should have expected. And they make things really, really uncomfortable for the Union. Jim Curtin obviously starts with Mikel on the bench. Quinn Sullivan gets the start. You go with Damion Lowe in for Jack Elliott, Nate Harriel in for Bizo, and Jesus Bueno to the bench, or not even the bench, for Jose Martinez because of his ankle injury. And we just saw, too, that Jesus is not traveling with Venezuela, and you got to feel so bad for him. Back-to-back call-ups and still waiting for that debut with his national team because of injuries. A player that has meant so much to this Union squad this year. Probably the biggest bright spot this whole season was seeing Jesus's emergence into the first team. And he's worked so hard to get the attention of that national team. And now to miss back-to-back call-ups, I feel so bad for him. And injuries are part of the game, I get that. But man, like you've got to feel it for him. You gotta. And so I told you guys in the intro, I mean, just the vibes felt off in this game with the fans, with the players, with Jim Curtin in the press conference room. Just nobody really seemed in the mood to talk. There really wasn't anything to ask, which is fine. And I think just all of us, media members, players, coaching staff, front office members, fans, I think we're all just tired and ready for the season to be over. I mean, I feel like we should have been in playoffs already. I got a notification on my phone today that October 9th on Monday is when we're recording this podcast. You guys are majority probably listening to the podcast on Tuesday. But yeah, it was supposed to be like last year. This was the last regular season game of the season. And then playoffs were starting the next week or whatever it was. And the last game this year is going to be October 21st for the MLS regular season. And then we have a long, weird playoffs with MLS Cup set to be on December 9th. The playoffs for the wildcard matches begin on October 25th and 26th. And then we head into the best of 3 series. And then we head into the conference semifinals, and then a conference final, and then MLS Cup. I mean, it's so much MLS this season. I love soccer, but this season's been dragging. Just like this podcast, right? And I'm so sorry, right? If you guys are listening to this podcast, like, man, you sound so tired. You sound like you don't want to record this podcast episode. And you're probably partially right. And so I appreciate you guys listening to this episode. Can't wait to tell you guys Blunder of the Week, though. So hopefully you guys stay around for that, because Blunder of the Week has a lot to do with what happened against Atlanta last Wednesday. Can't wait to explain to you guys what happened. But the point I was making, nobody wanted to talk in the locker room. Jim Curtin didn't want to talk. The vibes were off in the stadium. Just trying to get you guys caught up because I know I got distracted and we went off the rails a little bit. But this is the only notable thing that came from Jim Curtin's press conference. I'll play the whole exchange. The question came from Jonathan Tannenwald. He had a follow-up question, and this is everything that went down in that question and answer.
Like I said, the best attackers were on the field at the end of the game, and that's the guys that are going to take us to on another MLS Cup run, or or it's going to be hard, one way or the other. So, yeah, we didn't create enough. We want to score goals at home. We didn't concede much. So overall, again, it's a point. We'll move on.
Endorsement I've ever heard
of what?
Of everybody else.
No, the guys are on the bench. I mean, we changed Mikel. Mikel came in and tried to help us win. And we didn't score.
Yeah, and I do agree with Jonathan there. Doesn't sound like it's the biggest endorsement to the players on the bench. Ty Barubo doesn't get into this game. Chris Donovan doesn't come off the bench. Liam Flock doesn't come off the bench. Olivier Bizer doesn't come off the bench. And I was talking to Alex, a listener of the podcast, and he brought up a really good point about Daniel Gazdag. And I love Gazdag, but when you have teams like Atlanta that play in a low block that are going to sit deep, what does Daniel Gazdag do for you as a 10? He doesn't break teams down. He's not a traditional 10 that's a playmaker, or the traditional 10 that broke you down with their passing. Yeah, Gazdag will give you fancy flicks, make runs in behind the striker. But against a team like Nashville that are going to make things really congested in the middle, sit back super deep, those flicks, those fancy passes don't come off. And this really felt like a game that should have been for Joaquin Torres. It's a game that I feel like maybe you bring Joaquin Torres in for. A player that can beat you on the dribble. And this game reminded me a lot of the Chicago Fire game back at home a ways ago, where the Union win 1-0 because of that Joaquin Torres long-range strike. Chris Brady should have done a better job with it. I believe he got a deflection on the ball. Ball winds up in the back of the net. Very fortunate that went in, Joaquin Torres is. But you didn't know, right? I mean, sometimes you got to create your own luck, and maybe he could have done it again. This just felt like the Union had no difference maker on the bench that could break down Nashville. I mean, you heard Jim say, well, we brought in Mikel. We just couldn't score. Again, I'll read the stat line for you guys. 14 shots, 5 shots on target, 0.5 expected goals to Nashville's 0.36. 7 shots, 1 shot, 1 target. Andre Blake had 0 to do in this game. Joe Willis, 5 saves in this game, but none of those shots at him were really good chances to score. And I don't know, do you guys think the Union need to go back in the offseason and sign a backup 10? Sign a 10 that's different than Daniel Gazdag that can break teams down with their passing? I think so. I think the Union thought they could make Joaquin Torres that. And it just hasn't worked out for Joaquin. Doesn't fit in the team. Jim Curtin said earlier in his press conference, we pick our guys to start who do well in practice, that show that they deserve it in practice. Again, not a great ringing endorsement then for Ty Baribo, Joaquin Torres, Andres Pereira, Richard Odada when they were at the club. And I'm not faulting Jim at all because, growing up, playing soccer in high school, it's what my coaches said all the time too, is like, we're not going to give starting spots. You got to earn it in practice. If you want to play in games, then give 100% in practice. Use practice as it's a game. Show coaches you deserve to start to get more playing time. So that's no fault to Jim. That's just basic coaching 101. You got to earn your minutes. The games are the fun part, right? You got to put it in when nobody's watching, in the weight room, in the film room, on the practice field. Show the coaching staff something different. And you put in all that hard work during the week. The fun part comes at the end of the week, the game. And so I thought that was a interesting exchange between Jim Curtin and Jonathan Tannenwald. And you heard the little pause there by Jim Curtin. Didn't want to throw anybody under the bus. Had to pause and think about what he just said. And he's right, the Union didn't score. It's simple as that. Didn't create enough good chances. And I guess we can go ahead and turn to the Union's unbeaten run. 8 games without a loss, which is tied for the current longest streak with Seattle in MLS. It's good, right? During this run, the Union have scored 13 goals and conceded 9. That's tied for the fewest goals conceded with Orlando, Cincinnati, Dallas, and Charlotte. The Union are also tied for the 5th points earned during this run with 12. Orlando leads the lead with 17, who have been on fire. During this run, the Union have been shut out twice. LAFC and now Nashville. Both of those were home games for the Union. Does that concern any of you guys at all? Only 8 losses, though, this year for the Union in MLS play. Tied for the 3rd fewest in the league. Not bad. And we know this team doesn't lose often. They're well-disciplined. But man, the amount of draws during this stretch, it just feels so deflating, doesn't it? The Union, again, we're just going to keep talking about this unbeaten run because, it's got to be some sort of a positive, right? During these 8 games, the Union have averaged 1.6 goals a game, and that's about their average on the season as a whole, 1.6. So it's not like they're not scoring. They are scoring goals. They average a little over 1 goal conceded a game during the stretch, and that's on par with the amount of goals they concede per game for the rest of the season. So they're scoring the same amount of goals. They're conceding the same amount of goals. Maybe this team's just average. Maybe the only other positive you can take out of this is who in MLS is really running away with this. What teams in MLS scare you? I feel like if the Union somehow have to face Cincinnati somewhere in the playoffs, I don't think they scare you. It's going to be a low-scoring game. Both teams very well disciplined defensively. Going to Orlando City doesn't really scare me at all. Columbus is a little bit of a concern. facing Atlanta is a little bit of a concern. This Nashville team could very well end up playing the Union once again. That's a little bit of a concern. Because it's probably going to go to all 3 games if the Union have to play Nashville again. It's going to be low scoring. A couple of those games going to go to penalties. Do you have faith that the Union can beat Nashville once again in penalties? Another Walker Zimmerman miss and then blaming the field? You guys would love that. But yeah, maybe the Union just are average. I don't know. Maybe the league as a whole is average. Because last year I think it was pretty obvious that LAFC and the Union were the best teams in MLS. And it wasn't even close. And both teams make the final. Now this year for the playoffs, I'm not sure. I don't have a clear favorite for either side, the West or the East, to make MLS Cup. Yeah, some people can say Cincinnati because they've been in first place in the Supporters' Shield standings majority of the season, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, until Cincinnati can prove it in the playoffs, and I know you got to get there first. They're there. Prove that you can handle the pressure. You've done it during the regular season. Great. See if you can do it during the playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, this game against New England, decision day, it's going to be huge. Jose Martinez, by the way, going to miss that game because he's suspended once again because of the yellow card accumulation. Look, it's simple. You want to finish in third place where the Union currently stand? Beat New England on decision day. Because the first 2 spots are locked up with Cincinnati and Orlando City. So 3, 4, and 5 are where the Union can finish. A lot of different scenarios. But it's as simple as the Union want to finish in third, beat New England. New England sit on 52 points, 14 wins, plus 12 goal differential. They have Nashville this upcoming weekend at home. And once again, the Union, New England play 10-21. New England once again at home. 52 points in 5th place. Could jump Columbus this weekend. Could potentially jump the Union if they get that goal differential higher than the Unions, who's at plus 17. Because if New England wins against Nashville, then both teams will be at 55 points. Both teams will be at 15 wins. But it all depends on that goal differential. So that's the next tiebreaker. You don't expect Nashville to give up a ton of goals this game. So we'll see what happens. Definitely a game to keep an eye on. And then Columbus, they end the season with Montreal. Columbus at home, 10-21. 54 points, 15 wins, plus 20 goal differential. Montreal have something to play for decision day. They're fighting to get into the playoffs. And this is exactly what MLS wanted. They wanted these games to mean something at the end of the season. They wanted majority of the teams to still be alive at the end of the year. And so MLS is getting exactly what they wanted. But like I said, I mean, it's as simple as the Union win in New England. They finished third. Ball's in your court. Take care of your business. So we'll see what happens. And Damion Lowe, I guess we'll end with that. And then 3 stars Blunder of the week, because I got to tell you guys, Blunder of the week. You guys will love this. Damion Lowe played fantastic. The best player on the field on the night. It's the reason why he's star number 1. Absolutely shut down Hani Mukhtar. There was one moment Hani got by him, and then Damion Lowe caught up to him, won the ball back. Great defending by Damion. Teal Bunbury in the second half turned Damion Lowe. Fortunately, nothing came of his shot. But what a performance from Damion Lowe. 4 out of 5 tackles won, 3 headed clearances, 9 ball recoveries, 7 out of 13 ground duels won. Fantastic player. So well composed in the back. Great partnership between him and Jacob Glesnes. And Jim Curtin also said after the game that Damion Lowe's built for big moments. And if that's the case, will we see him more in the playoffs? Will he start in the playoffs? It's not the time to start getting cute with your roster. So we'll see. We'll see what happens come playoff time. Number 2, Kai Wagner. 2 chances created, 7 passes into the final third, 1 out of 1 tackles won, 4 interceptions, 4 ball recoveries, 4 out of 5 ground duels won. And then Nate Harriel, number 3, 4 chances created, 8 passes into the final third, 1 out of 1 tackles won, 4 interceptions, 1 out of 2 ground duels won. The fullbacks in this game for the Union were fantastic, both offensively and defensively. The only players that try to create anything for the Union on the night just couldn't finish. And again, it's a credit to Nashville. The Union have set history, though. They have been shut out at home 4 times this season. The previous record for that came in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. The Union during those years were shut out twice at home. The Union have done it 4 times now this season in MLS. Not great. When's the last time the Union had 6 or more draws at home? 2014. They had 8. So, the Union end the regular season at home. Still have a decision day to come. Yes, the Union had a winning record once again at Subaru Park. 10-1-6. Only loss coming against Orlando City at the beginning of the season during an international break. But to get shut out 4 times at Subaru Park, a little bit concerning. A little bit concerning, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week. And so I have no clue what happened here. But if you guys remember last episode, I told you guys to go ahead and check out the Atlanta United YouTube video. Thought I had that video posted. I checked YouTube, and the video's not uploaded. I'm like, what's that about? I ran through the checks and everything. Everything seemed like it was good to go. I'm like, okay, this is great. Everything's running as normal as possible. And then I go and click on the video, and it says that there are some visibility restrictions on your video. However, your channel is not affected. I said, okay, so what's this all about? So apparently, my Atlanta United goals review video has been blocked by Apple. And this makes no sense to me, because if you guys have watched these videos, you would think, yeah, I've watched every single video you've posted on YouTube this season. You haven't missed a video since the LAFC game, the Dallas game, because I'm on vacation. And now we get no game for Atlanta? What's up with that, Todd? Yeah, I'm with you guys. What's up with that? That's not my fault. It's Apple. Come on, Apple. It makes no sense to me, because when I click on some of the other videos, it says restrictions, copyright. Okay, that's fine. Because it says MLS allows this type of video. So if MLS is allowing the video, and this is the first time, and apparently, I'm like, okay, is this a copyright strike? Apparently, it's not a copyright strike at all. It's something called, let's go ahead, I'll find the exact word for you guys. I'm looking at the YouTube video. It's called a content ID claim.
Yeah, not good.
Block. That's all it is. So my YouTube channel doesn't get affected. It's not a copyright strike telling me to take down the video because I can't even let you guys see the video. Just sitting there on my YouTube channel saying nobody can view it. But it makes no sense. And the only thing I can think of, and I know I'm not that big enough, is during the video, the first thing I opened up with was complaining about how the Apple feed during the game went down. And I complained about that the last episode. So do you mean to tell me that Apple listened to the podcast and said, we are blocking this dude's YouTube videos. We're not letting him post goal breakdowns anymore. Is that what happened, Apple? Come on. And maybe somebody understands this a lot better than me. How can all these months go by and MLS allows it? And now it becomes an Apple issue? And Apple says that, nope, no matter in the world, you can't view this video. Makes no sense to me. But you guys had no goal breakdown videos now for a couple of weeks. Felt like I wasted so much time breaking that video down for you guys, just for you guys not to see it. Stupid Apple. Apple, if you're listening, you guys have done a really good job marketing. There's a reason I went out and bought a MacBook Pro. There's a reason why I went out and bought an iPhone. It's because you guys are taking over MLS. I can't stop seeing you. It's great marketing. I've bought into what I said I would never buy into because you guys have your hands tied all over the league that I love, that I follow. How could I not buy Apple products? I'm a sellout. And this is how you repay me? By blocking my video? I'm not making any money on these videos. I'm just trying to show the tactical side of things. And you say, no video for you. So is it worth me to throw up a 0-0 video for you guys just showing you defensive plays by Damion Lowe? Is it worth trying to put up that video for you guys? Let me know on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Free Kick Pod. Wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Like, review, share the video. More podcasts. Can email me too. Sure, you guys can find some way to find my email address. But it's not hard to reach out to me on social media. At It's a Todd's Life personally. At me, and I'll see it. So should I put out a YouTube video? YouTube.com/freekickpod. A lot going on though this week. Appearing on a project you guys will see later in the day. I'll be tweeting about it. Should be a good time. Talking Union. May appear on another podcast. So 2 podcasts potentially lined up this week. Something really, really special planned for Thursday with Kyle Omni. Can't wait to show you guys on social media. Be sure, that's the day. If you guys aren't following me on social media, be sure to check out Instagram and Twitter. Thursday is going to be epic. And then potentially a podcast episode with Kyle Omni and myself. And then preparation for next week against New England. So busy week this week. 3 potential podcasts, but as long as you guys aren't tired of hearing from me, then I'm sure you guys will check out these podcasts. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.